what we've done as an industry, especially within APAC or Australia and New Zealand, is maybe 15 years ago we went down the model of overseas low-cost resource centres. Mm. And that has left a massive hole in the middle of our industry in the sort of the 5 to 15 year mark of experience. And it's really hard to find those people with the 5 to 15 years experience. That, you know, the ones that we need to mentor, the really junior ones coming through. You don't want to have your 25, 30 year experienced guy mentoring a cadet. You want him to be mentoring someone in the middle, and then the cadet being mentored by the one from the middle, passing his knowledge down. And at the moment, we really struggle to find that 5 to 15 year experience mark within the industry, which I think is having, and I know all of our competitors talking the same stuff, and it's having a bit of an impact on the way we deliver projects, I think.
Hi, Adam. Welcome to the Digital Construction Podcast. How are you today?
Good. Thank you for having me.
Today, we sit down with Adam Favaloro. He is a digital leader. He has a long career. At the moment, works at GHD, but he will tell us a lot more about his career. I'm very excited to have this conversation with you, Adam, today. But before we start, I want to ask you a couple of icebreakers. If you could have any superpowers to make a construction project go perfectly, what would that be?
Superpower to make a construction project go smoothly or perfectly. Twice the program we have at the beginning, so we can solve all the problems before they start on site. Every project we deliver these days is under a massive time crunch. We never seem to have enough time to get it right in the beginning, and we spend most of the time trying to resolve issues either through the digital model, doing things in BIM quickly and efficiently, resolving unresolvable issues within the model before they do it on site. It's all in a matter of months. Not what would be lovely if it takes 5 years to build a project. It'd be lovely to have 5 years to design it, but we try and squeeze it into 18 months in some cases.
Yeah.
So my superpower, make the programs twice as long, or at least have the ability to pre-think about what these things are going to be and have them solved when they arise.
That's good. And I hope you can double the budget as well.
Yeah, that's never going to happen, right? We always work on that little percentage of the overall project margin, and I don't think that's going to grow anytime soon.
Yeah, definitely. And if you think about your career, and I'm sure you've had many mentors and you interacted with so many people, but if you think about the best piece of advice you've ever received in your career, what would that be?
I've had heaps of mentors along the way. Some really good ones, some not so good ones, but probably the best mentor I had said, make sure you enjoy what you do, because you're going to be doing it for a long time. And it's going to consume a large chunk of your life. So if you don't enjoy it, it's going to make it a really big task. And it's probably why I've jumped around a bit in my career, and we could probably go into that a bit further, but it's probably why I've stayed as a digital engineering lead, because I really enjoy getting to see the things that I've been involved in from tender through design and into construction get built and make an impact on the world.
Yeah, that's great. And at the moment you are at GHD, but I always find useful to share with the audience how you end up in the position you are now, because I found that this digital career in construction, different people come from different angles. Can you share with us a little bit about your career and your journey?
So my journey started out, my family had a construction company when my father was still working. He wanted me to always become a builder, but I saw that as being too hard, too much manual work in the field. So I decided I wanted to do something different, something more design orientated. So studied as a naval architecture, thought about doing something with boats, realised there was no real money in that, and then ended up as a drafter in and around interior fit outs and stuff. Worked my way up to be a senior drafter and sort of junior project manager, and then jumped across into asset management with Agility or AGL, the gas company. I worked there for a couple of years, helping them map gas mains, getting a bit involved in GIS, getting a greater understanding of how what we do as drafters every day has an impact on the greater community. And then got really frustrated working there because systems didn't evolve quickly enough. For a big organisation like that, they didn't didn't necessarily use industry best practice or the best tools. Thought that by joining a consultant, things would be a bit more fast-paced and we better make change in a lot more of a hurry. So I made the jump across to becoming a consultant, and that was probably 22, 23 years ago now. And then from there, I think I joined MWH, which is now Stantec, as the New South Wales lead, primarily because they were an engineering organisation at the time that was already doing BIM, or we called it project information modelling. Everything they did was in 3D, and that was really a passion of mine back then, and doing everything, making sure we had fully coordinated designs. And then spent a couple of years following the project work with them in the water market, got to move around and work in various parts of Australia. Left them and joined CH Durham Hill, primarily to continue working in the water market when Monty's water market slowed down. Led the APAC team at CH, again doing everything in water in BIM until the end of the water market peak in Australia, that we stopped, the drought died and it started raining, so they stopped spending money on water. Did some work with them through Perth and up into Singapore, and then I think we won the 2-house desal plant in Singapore, and it was time for me to make a decision whether I move to Singapore or stay in Australia and do something else. So then I joined GHD and started looking at transport as the next big market to drag BIM into. And so my life started with GHD, and we started what was then, I guess I joined GHD to start the Central Station tender, which was probably the first foray into digital twins with Transport for New South Wales and Lang O'Rourke and Oricon. And we took the journey on from there and built what's probably still considered one of the biggest, most complex digital twins for infrastructure transport project in Australia with that project.
No, that's great. I can see. I know you've worked on so many projects, and you didn't make the list during this short introduction because
there's lots that didn't make the list.
Yeah. It's very hard to make to summarize a long career in just trying to answer a question. I'm very interested to know your point of view around the role of digital engineering in the construction industry. So it's particularly in the infrastructure sector, which is where I think you work the most.
Yeah. So it's interesting, right? So digital engineering, I guess, has evolved throughout that construction phase. When we first started talking about digital engineering or BIM in projects, it was really around helping the end user or the plant operator visualize what we were giving them so that they could get on board with what we were designing before we designed it. So there's no point in building something that is not going to be feasible for the end operator to use. And that was really important when we're working with Sydney Water on around treatment plants. Were we giving them enough space to operate a pump or to maintain a valve or do that sort of thing? But now it's evolved a bit more. We've evolved through that sort of end user stakeholder engagement piece. We transitioned through the public customer stakeholder with all the visualization stuff we did in the sort of the early to mid 2000s. Every project we did had massive customer stakeholder requirements, and you'd always be doing these visualizations and getting the community engagement or involvement in a project before we got to delivery. And now we've transitioned into, we add all of this metadata into the projects, into what becomes really a digital twin of the asset going forward for construction to use to help them facilitate the planning and delivery of the project, but then for it to be used as an asset at the end, which is where I see the most impact of what we do now. If you're an asset owner, having that asset owner background when I worked at AGL, if you could go and look at a model and know that it was maintained and up to date and be able to hand that to the next guy to do an upgrade on that project without having to spend thousands or millions of dollars on survey to verify the asset is as it was built, you're like 3 steps ahead before we start a project. Whereas most of our projects these days, we go to site, we do a survey of the site, we build a model that takes hundreds of hours in some cases and lots of dollars to build. Imagine if you're the asset owner, you can just hand, here's my model. I'd like you to add 2 more platforms or another process unit onto the side of this. go, and it should be good to go. It would make a massive difference to the way we deliver our infrastructure in the future.
Yeah, definitely.
Save us lots of money, lots of taxpayer dollars, because 90% of infrastructure is funded by us, the public.
Yeah, very good point. I've seen an interesting evolution where for a long time we've been talking about how the digital side of engineering will help the design stage, but we're clearly missing the opportunity that we actually have after that, because the life of the asset is a lot longer than the construction phase. So yeah, I'm glad that now the industry is finally maturing and understanding that.
I think we're maturing very slowly. That bit beyond, all the money is still in the construction phase, right? So we spend a lot of time and effort in building an asset. We're slowly transitioning into that next phase of how do you manage the asset after. I think that's our biggest opportunity for growth as an industry is in that space. So I don't think we're not adopting it as quickly as we did digital engineering for construction or FMA and that sort of stuff.
Yeah, that's a very good point. I was about to ask you what do you think is the unique value that digital engineering brings to these major projects? Is it related to the asset management? Is it related to the design, the construction?
I think it comes. There's a couple of things we bring to the projects these days. I don't know that our construction staff have the same level or the same upbringing that our old constructors used to have. So 20 years ago, we used to produce 2D drawings and people could just work out the clashes in the Z-plane. Everyone these days thinks, or every app we have on our phone is in 3D. People think we should be designing in 3D. There's no excuse now for having a clash in the Z-plane of elements. The overlapping of elements should be all resolved. And I think the onus from the construction to resolve that is now firmly back into design space to resolve that for the construction team. And that has shifted the requirement for us to actually work in a more coordinated fashion in the Z-plane, which is where the digital model has sort of helped us. Then, as I said, there's always a crunch on program. And I think we can spend 15, 20 minutes resolving an issue in the model, using the data within the model and the attributes within the model to try and resolve something for the construction team. And it may save hundreds of hours in construction. You know, if you change Central Station, we changed the wall type from what would have been traditional blockwork walls to a speedy panel solution, which is something that can come on site and be erected within hours without having to wait for concrete or mortar to go off and get things done. That sort of stuff has significantly impacted the way we deliver projects. And we resolve all those problems for them on site. But then as we move into asset management and those digital twins and how they'll be used in the future, I think the potential is endless. I think there's massive potential for, as we move to the new ways of working and doing things differently, it'll be more required. The model will become more of an information tool for those guys operating things in the future or managing the infrastructure. We used to have a facilities manager that would manage a building. Now facilities managers are across multiple buildings using the data within those models and from the operating assets to decide when to replace things instead of being there and replacing it the day after it breaks. So I think there's a whole lot of preventative stuff we can do with the data from the models that will change the way we do things in the future.
Yeah, definitely. And if we try to think about the challenges and the bottlenecks that digital engineering teams find from the company's point of view, I think during this podcast we touched a lot. We discussed a lot about the problems that people have from the being manager point of view, and that's also something that's very, very interesting. I know you have experience around the budget constraints and how difficult it is to manage costs associated with digital tools and processes, or sometimes the misalignment between expectation between design, engineering, and construction teams. So from your point of view, what are the key challenges that you find?
I think we're all still struggling with what does digital engineering mean for projects and how much value does it bring versus what's the return on investment and how much should I invest? And even to this day, I have projects where we're given hours and hours to plan and forecast and set up a project correctly. then other projects with other project managers that will be just saying, digital engineering is just an add-on cost that adds no value to my project. I'm not really going to give you many hours and just deliver what you have to as a bare minimum.
Mm-hmm.
So there's always that tension around, am I adding value to a project? Is the value realized by the project? Did I win the war with the project manager to get enough time and enough things to make digital engineering a valuable addition to the project that we're delivering? And it all changed depending on the type of project which goes along. The other things we still struggle with is people are not very good at change. By their very nature, all humans, and I think that even if you weren't talking about digital and about anything else, we're very slow to accept change. And we're asking, and for many years we've been asking people to change the way they work in engineering. And we're making that change now probably faster than we ever did before, but it's probably you're still going to bang heads with the senior reviewers and the principals that need to sign off on this stuff at the very end of the process. So educating them in the process and how you got to where you were, well, from where you were to where we are now, has always been an interesting journey or conversation depending on the project. And then my last one is my pet hate on every project. We produce so many drawings for the sake of producing drawings. Why? Why? I was talking about it with the civil team around a treatment plant we delivered the other day. And we have these beautiful drawings. There's like 400 drawings for some roads around this treatment plant. The drawings were correct and perfectly fine. There's engineers have signed off the drawings as being correct, but the surveyors don't use the drawings to set out the roads. They use the curb strings from the model export. And we had 5 inconsistencies in the curb strings where the curb strings weren't aligned as they went round the curb return. So there were 5 rejections from all of this effort we put into producing all these drawings, and no one's even looked at the drawings. They went in the bin. They basically used the curb return exports as a string, gave it to the surveyor to set it out, and that's all they've used on site. So what was the value of the drawing?
Yeah, it's interesting. Transitioning from different way of delivering projects, and these drawings are something that we've been delivering for a long time.
We're still bound to contractually, but we need to change that thinking.
Yeah, many people say ideally we just deliver models. What do you think about that?
I think we're still somewhere in between, but I think there's certainly massive opportunities to reduce the number of drawings we produce and add more value where it's suitable.
Yeah, definitely. And sometimes when you think about producing drawings or producing models, like you try to standardize digital practices across multidisciplinary teams. Like, how do you achieve that? Like, it could be challenging sometimes.
It's extremely challenging in this current environment with everyone using different authoring packages. And I think as an industry, we've got pretty good at standardising authoring packages across a discipline, across the industry, but then from discipline in the project team. Structure will use one package, civil will use something different, process mechanical will use something different, and then building services will use maybe go back to Revit, the same as the structural team. We can have this consistent suite of differing authoring applications that make life really hard as a BIM manager to have consistent ways of working, and even a consistent common data environment across a project on the big ones. So I just I've just worked on my last couple of projects have all been joint ventures, and I'm surprised about the level of alignment between the big 5 engineering firms on the software packages we use for structural design, building services, plant and mechanical, and then civil. But for those 4 or 5 disciplines, they're all using, 2 of them are using Revit. The rest are all on different authoring packages depending on the resource availability, and it makes it impossible to get things to be seamless on a project.
Yeah. When we were offline, you mentioned that Revit is not exactly your favorite tool. Do you want to expand on that?
So I guess Revit is a good tool for vertical infrastructure, but we now use it for so much more than just vertical infrastructure. We're using it on now the Western Tunnel package, which I'm currently digital leading. we use it for developing tunnel models. So we've modelled every tunnel ring within the tunnel, and that's a long geometric shape where we've used Revit along the way. We've found some bugs. We have we've broken the tunnels down into what we thought would be suitable, and then we've broken them down again throughout the project to try and make them even easier to meet what we thought, what we perceived from reading the client standard to be the client's requirements. But we've constantly been challenged with the size of the file and how much we can squeeze into the file. But it's been really good in doing the metadata. So maybe we leant really hard on the software for the wrong reason, and we're targeting metadata population as a primary reason, and the interfaces with other elements, and trying to standardize a software package across the project, where we have a whole lot of structural packages that are almost vertical infrastructure in the ground. So they were easy. They worked really well in Revit, whereas the curved tunnel alignments were not quite as easy to run. And there was a whole lot of things that we generated or found along the way and learned through experience, where the deficiencies of the software or even our modelling techniques in modelling some of the stuff came back.
Something good for Autodesk to take note and make sure they improve the product.
Yeah, and the other one with Revit is interoperability. Inability to, I mean, that's probably the big difference between Autodesk and Bentley is the number of native authoring packages that have a different native format, versus Bentley are pretty good at everything's in DGN. Now, whether they all talk is one thing, but they're all in DGN. So the referencing of the multidisciplinary project is something that I'm a firm believer in. The whole project team, if from a singular project from a single organisation, all modelers live link and have the active fight around design coordination. Back in my Monty's days, we used to have the war room, and we used to put all the modelers, structural, civil, and mechanical, in one room, live linking their models together, and the modelers would fight over, my pipe needs a penetration in that wall, my driveway's below or above your slab surface. The design coordination sort of happened by its very nature in the design office, because they'd have those active fights instead of waiting for the federated model to come out of Adam on a Friday. It would be nice to get back to that state. I don't know if it will work on a project with 100 people, but it would be nice to have that thought that it could all work that way.
Yeah, use some good lessons from the past and implement it today.
Well, yeah, but it's hard now.
Yeah, definitely.
Everything's so much bigger. Well.
Another thing that makes probably the delivery of the project hard is budget limitations. So I know that we all want to deliver the best project from the digital engineering point of view, using all the smarts and the tools. But from your point of view, how do you adjust the implementation of a digital strategy, considering the budget limitations you may have on different projects?
It's about maximum bang for buck to suit the project requirement. So we'll tailor our digital solution depending on the type of project. And even reviewing what are the risks, what are the potential risks of someone doing this project in just 2D. Let's just say it's a pipeline down the side of a road or a footpath. Is there any value in doing that in digital? Probably not. So we'll park it on that one, and we'll let the project management have their win on that one. But on something more complex, like a tunnel interface with 3 other buildings, we might go, this is where you want to spend all your dollars on digital engineering, Mr. Project Manager, because the risk to your project that something goes wrong in this space means that we should probably focus primarily on that area and ignore the other areas in the project. And it's more of a risk versus reward sort of a scenario where we try and influence the project managers to give us budget to manage risk with that money.
Definitely. In terms of I know you have a lot of experience in recruiting and organizing teams and to deliver projects, but even within the business, I would like to know from your point of view, how should company structure digital engineering team to be most effective? Like, you can think about that as an organization chart. It's complex because I've seen that it keeps on evolving as the discipline evolves. Like, we had drafters, and then we have BIM modelers, and now we have digital.
Then we digital engineering leads, so it's interesting. So, GHD, we've gone through a couple of iterations of that, even in the GHD. When I joined GHD as a digital engineering lead, I lived in the project management team because we needed to influence the project managers and design managers on using digital engineering to help them deliver coordinated designs in their projects. Once we sort of had the wins on the board in that space, I transitioned and we built what we now call the digital delivery team, where all the modelling resources lived in the one team to try and drive that project coordination piece, where one person as a business group manager is across 50 modelers and drafters. They're all working on various projects indifferently. When a group of them are working together, you can drive them to coordinate better because they're in that team. Does that work for what we do in the future? I'm not sure, because maybe we've broken the connection with the engineers by bringing them all. So we brought them out of their engineering groups into that core digital delivery group, and the relationship with the engineer may have suffered from that. Maybe they need to go back to the engineering groups. It's an interesting one, and I think it's an evolving dynamic where we have to continue to tweak that. And then when we end up with a major projects team, I still love the idea of getting the whole major projects team in an office together. It probably will never happen again after COVID. So before COVID, Central Station, we had 60% of the modelers and drafters that delivered on that project would at least spend 3 days a week together on a floor in Sydney, working collaboratively together, face to face. There were the guys in Hong Kong and South Africa and Brisbane. Brisbane we would bring down occasionally, but South Africa and Hong Kong would only be via Teams. But we did our best to make sure people work together face to face. Maybe I'm still old school in that regard. Future projects, that won't happen. I know that won't happen. We build teams virtually these days, and getting the best out of people virtually is still, I think, something the industry needs to work on.
Yeah, probably every industry. It's just a massive change in the way people work.
I don't even think it's a massive change in the way people work. I think it's the way we communicate. I don't think we're adjusted yet. Although the younger generation seems to have adjusted to Teams really well, I think the seniors and middles haven't quite caught up with that way of communicating, or aren't quite used to it, and we're losing a bit of that communication or free sharing of information.
Yeah, even like finding the right way to mentor people that are not sitting next to you. Yeah. It's a big challenge for the more experienced people in the team, I guess.
It is, and we're constantly, so the Sydney sort of leadership team around digital delivery, we're constantly sitting there challenging ourselves, and how do we mentor the next cadet drafter, or the drafter that we've hired that now sits in the Philippines? How do you mentor that person if you cannot just hear their conversation when you're sitting beside them, or lean over the wall and have a look at what they're doing on the computer screen? It's really difficult.
Yeah, definitely. And we already mentioned that the discipline has evolved, and people were drafter before, and now digital engineering, digital leads, like we call it the way you like. But
still a lot of people who want to call themselves just drafter and ignore the digital engineering aspect of it.
Yeah, exactly. But from your point of view, what are the skills that are not negotiable for the profession? Like if you want to start this profession, or if you already are in this profession, what are the skills that you should really have?
Well, it's an interesting one. I think to be a good digital engineer, you really need to understand the element you're involved in the design of, sort of how it's constructed. So much of what we do these days is reflecting the construction of that design in a model. So it helps to be sort of familiar with the construction processes and have had some sort of exposure to those construction techniques before you get involved in delivering a project. We see a lot of things these days where, you've got to model construction joints in a slab or fabrication spools of a pipe when we're delivering stuff. And it really helps to make sure you understand that. The other thing is to be able to be an extrovert and be able to openly communicate with teams. I know a lot of digital design people or drafters were introverts that just sat there on the drawing board and did what the engineer sent us in a red pen markup. I think that has changed forever now. We have to interact more with the people around us and solicit information from them to be able to produce a quality design. We're not necessarily going to get a red pen markup if there's not a drawing, and that's so far down the chain now that it's probably a waste of time to wait till that drawing is produced to get engineering markup. you need to get their engagement on the model and drive that coordination piece. So I think being a little bit extroverted, having a good understanding of thing you're designing and how it's constructed, just like it used to as a drafter, are key skills. But then a bit more drive to try and do things better, quicker, faster as well. So always challenging the software or the way we do things, the workflows. I don't think what we did 20 years ago was certainly not the same as it is today. But I don't think what we do today will necessarily be the same thing we do in 5 years' time or 10 years' time.
Yeah, some of them will probably say, where do I find the time to experiment new stuff if I'm delivering projects, right? This is one of the classic objections.
That's always the classic objection, but it's, if you spend 5 minutes looking for something or asking Copilot a question, and it saves 30 minutes out of tomorrow's task, was it time well spent? I think so. Yeah,
definitely. No, I agree totally. I think it's always important to experiment and try to find new solution. It's an investment you do for yourself and for your team.
It is self-investment, and you could change the business. If you crack something, you could change the business.
Yeah, definitely. And do you find like big gaps with these skills when you try to hire for new people? Like, is it hard?
I think what we've done as an industry, especially within APAC or Australia and New Zealand, is maybe 15 years ago we went down the model of overseas low-cost resource centres. Mm. And that has left a hole in the middle of our industry in the sort of the 5 to 15 year mark of experience. And it's really hard to find those people with the 5 to 15 years experience. The ones that we need to mentor, the really junior ones coming through. You don't want to have your 25, 30 year experienced guy mentoring a cadet. You want him to be mentoring someone in the middle, and then the cadet being mentored by the one from the middle, passing his knowledge down. And at the moment, we really struggle to find that 5 to 15 year experience mark within the industry, which I think is having, and I know all of our competitors talking the same stuff, and it's having a bit of an impact on the way we deliver projects, I think.
That's a very interesting one, like the gap that we have created because of this idea of outsourcing. That's very interesting. And if you had an opportunity to speak with somebody that is starting now their career in digital engineering, what advice would you give to them?
So we do that. We've got a couple of, in the last 5 years, we've hired 10 or so cadets. So we've always tried to educate those guys, but it is about learn the art of drafting. I think we're also losing that as a bit of a skill. Everyone comes straight out of their cadet or being an apprentice drafty and learning how to use AutoCAD to I should be a modeler. We still have to produce a constructible drawing that is clear and concise. And that is a skill that I think the industry as a whole is losing. So they should learn that as the first skill. Then get some understanding of how things are constructed on site, and then get into the model. And then once you're proficient modeler and understand how to produce quality deliverables from modeling, that's when I guess the career pathway they get to choose, and there's probably a fork in the road at that point. Do you want to go down the path of BIM management, or is there a role for a technical specialist going forward? I think though maybe hopefully in the future they're the two career paths that will still exist in the industry and in at least ANZ.
Yeah, it's interesting. I think probably they need to also be ready and adjust and continuously evolve because the industry has changed so quickly in the last 2 decades.
It has. It's massive change. So it started out, well, when I started work, there was still a drawing board in the drafting office I started in. That might not have been 2 decades ago, but it wasn't much more than that.
Yeah.
And today we don't even have long plotters anymore. We don't even print drawings in A1 format. So massive change for an industry. Realistically, when you think in 25 years we've gone through that much change, that's pretty big.
Yeah, and it isn't a long time ago that people were still very skeptical around 3D products like
we still have those skeptics in the business today.
Yeah, definitely, they're still around.
They still exist, and maybe have we really got completely over the hurdle where that's not still a question?
Yeah, that's very interesting. And sometimes I want to touch a point on clients. Sometimes these people are on the client side and you need to demonstrate the value of digital engineering and the output and the outcome of the work of the digital engineering team to clients. So how do you manage that? How do you make sure that they understand the value, even if these clients are not necessarily digitally mature, I would say?
That's interesting because they're usually the last ones to change. And even though we have Transport for New South Wales who's done all that work in writing a digital engineering framework around how they want their projects delivered, the project manager that's engaged to deliver their project still doesn't understand the value of the digital model versus the 2D deliverable. And there are some prime examples. Matt, you had on a fortnight ago, he and I both worked on sections of the M12, which was probably the first Transport for New South Wales implementation on a roads-based project. We were on competing teams. We now work for the same company after that project. But we both built full digital twins of basically the roadway we developed on behalf of that client, which was Transport. They then procured the road with some constructors. The models are not being updated post AFC. There was the cost involved was perceived to be too much, so they're just updating the drawings. So all of that work we put into the model is now wasted. Why did we do all that effort during design? Or did we throw it in the bin because the project director decided it was too busy, too expensive when they got to the point where the contractors were obligated to do it? I don't know, but I think it's our job as digital engineering leads and as designers to sell the benefit to our clients, and depending on the client, we'll always be trying to trigger the next change in the industry. We've done some stuff with Sydney Water on a couple of projects where at the end of producing a digital twin for the construction of their projects, their systems aren't quite up to speed of how to manage that. So we sort of challenged through the RFI process and a bit of an education process for their teams. Instead of me giving you bound CAD files from all the Revit models and all the Plant 3D models, how about we give you the models and PDFs and we show you how to store the models and maybe get them updated by the next person. So there's opportunities to ask with the right clients. Whether they take the feedback on is the next question. It's still work in progress, but people are accepting change these days or starting to think about the change.
Yeah, that's great, and that's a very, very smart way to do that. But do you have any other strategies to showcase the long-term benefit of a well-executed digital workflow?
We've done plenty of presentations to clients about the ongoing workflows of using the digital models from pre-concept design through detailed design, construction, and into asset management. But I think the industry is still struggling with that, the cost involved in that imposition in managing that process all the way through, and where does it add value? Because we're always trying to get maximum value for the buck today. And the perception of what happens in 20, 30, 40 years' time, and if I spent $10 more today, what does it give me down the track? I don't think we've got that sort of foresight yet, especially in a government infrastructure sort of space where they might not be in government in that period of time.
Yeah, definitely. And do you think that the client's expectations at the end up shaping the evolution of this industry and how digital engineering services are delivered? Like, there is an important role for the client.
There is an important role of the client. I think the clients have done a fair bit of the shaping, and it's now left. It's probably back a little bit in our court to try and shape it back. I think we're all as an industry, we're very slow to adopt change. We have a contractual mechanism and we do the bare minimum that's in that contract. That's just where there's no reward for doing something different or doing something or changing industry. But basically, we're all challenged to do the most with the least amount of money. I think maybe the way we procure projects has to change where that value can seep back in. I think in the late 90s, early 2000s, we did a lot more stuff in alliances where it was best for industry, best for project, best for client. Maybe we spent a little bit more on those projects, but the long-term gain for the industry and the project and the client was significantly more than what we do today under the D&C sort of realm where we operate.
Definitely. And we are close to the end. I would like to talk about the future of digital engineering from your point of view. What trends do you believe will be most significant to shape the future of digital engineering in the future?
It's interesting. So as the service line leader for GHD, that's part of my role, is to sort of identify those trends and try and make us at least be riding on the front edge of those waves of change. And it's an interesting one when we get to digital engineering. I think machine learning, AI, and even your large language models, I think, are going to have an influence on the way we work in the future. We're starting to see it seep into some of the stuff in some of the modelling applications, but I think there's some massive growth to happen in that space. Computational design and that sort of stuff is already in there, but it's how do we use machine learning or AI to, do quality and quantitative checks of our drawings so that we don't have to have someone doing a drafting or modelling check at the end of the process. Is there the ability for it to do, tell it to grab the standard notes from the last 10 drawings and build a new structural general notes page for me? It's those sorts of things I think will have a massive impact for the next 5 to 10 years. And then beyond that, who knows? Hopefully I'm retired by that point. We'll do something different.
You're on a way. Nowhere to be found.
Sitting back as a BGL or something different, and not necessarily, maybe that'll be my time to step back out of the industry and just manage the people. Who knows?
Who knows? One big one is the push towards open standards and interoperability. Do you have an opinion on that?
I think they're all massive requirements of the industry that would make our jobs a whole lot easier, especially as digital engineering leads on multidisciplinary projects. I think while our software vendors are all saying the right things about they're working towards it, I don't know if we're really working towards it. We talk about IFC is the Industry Foundation Classification being the common format, but no one's talking about how do we edit those IFCs the next time the model gets updated. That is not even on the radar yet. So what does interoperability really mean? Back in the day when we did DWGs and DGNs, you could link the two together and sort of make it work in a CAD software. We've gone a long way from that with our modelling-based applications. It'd be nice to think we'll get back to there someday, but I think it's a massive undertaking for our software vendors. I'm not even sure it's even possible. We've gone so far down the paths of where we are. It would be lovely to see it, but I don't think we'll see it in my career.
Yeah, it's interesting because these software vendors now they have their monopoly of their own space, but
even their own, even the monopoly of their space, they still can't even get, it's taken a long time to get Civil 3D to talk to Revit. It's just the way they're not building from the core, they're requiring from the outside in. So it's very hard to rewrite those softwares to be able to accommodate the things that they've acquired from other spaces. And I know Autodesk are doing great stuff with ACC, sort of making it interoperable within the ACC environment, but how do we get, Civil 3D, Plant 3D, Revit to talk to each other? It's something I'm consistently asking from our account perspective. Help me with this space. It'd be lovely to see, but it's a big challenge, and we've added the Z value, we've added a whole lot of other data into those models now, and a whole lot of other intelligence. We're asking them a lot to try and get that back to a standard platform.
Yeah, I really like your view because it's a very balanced view, the type of balance that comes with experience. And maybe you've been excited about many things for many times, and now you're more balanced.
I've been through the motions enough times to know where we there's some things we can make a change on, and there's some things we can't. And I think, from an industry point of view, I think it's back now to us to make a change around digital engineering and driving the next round of change. I think our clients have done as much as they can do, or they set a value in. It's now back to us as an industry to either advocate for change or help change the construction contracts and get more from what we do.
Yeah. Is there something that still excites you a lot about digital engineering as an opportunity for the future?
Digital engineering to me is a tool to get projects complete. I still want to leave my footprint on the world. So, I really get a buzz out of being involved in the big projects. Yeah, Central Station, Western Sydney Airport, those big projects. For 20 years, I basically worked in the back room on water treatment plant projects where my children could never get involved in those projects. My buzz these days is, my kids can actually say, "Oh, look, Dad, that's a project you delivered." It's like, "Thanks, kids. I've only done this for 25 years, and you finally found one." But having that impact on the world is a bigger change to me than producing a cool model. But they couldn't build that cool train station or the cool airport without the models that our teams produce. So leading those teams is that bigger contribution to the bigger picture.
Yeah, that's amazing. Thank you, Adam. This was a great episode, and thank you for making the time to meet me.
Thank you for having me. It's been good.
If people want to reach out to you, where can they find you?
Probably the best place is via my LinkedIn profile, or they can always just contact me at GHD as the service line leader for digital delivery. Everyone should know who I am, hopefully.
Beautiful. Thank you, Adam.
Thank you, Andre. Have a good afternoon.